I'm Dane Rose. As a culture, whatever culture we're in, we're one of a heritage of more than 10,000 cultures in human history. That's 10,000 estimated languages, 10,000 stories. As every culture develops a story about its place in the world, about its place in the universe, in the multiverse, we are one. More than 90%, more than 95% of all of our cosmologies, all of our stories as a culture in human history have suggested a living organism, have related to our environment much as we relate to our own body, as being alive. The deeper we go into science within our own paradigm, within our own cultural cosmology, the more we understand how intimately we are related. You take the atomic structure and the core forces of physics in your body, and you go halfway around the universe and look at the forces of physics and the forces in the atomic structure in those objects billions of light years away, and you find the exact same language. You find the exact same underlying code. The codes connect every particle in the universe. Every single thing that happens in one area has a ripple effect. If the code of physics, if the gravitational constant changed, the entire universe would shift, not just our bodies. We are intimately and intricately connected. And although coming out of the hardcore, shaming and punishment and also domination of our Christian sects, appointing specific people within the church as the ultimate arbiter of the ultimate authority in the form of saying what is and isn't God's will, and then using that power to suppress information, to attack minorities. Although the backlash from that has been strong and important to liberate ourselves from the myopia of a very narrow power structure and a very narrow cosmology. The reality is that the anti-life narrative, the anti-meaning and purpose narrative, the thing that says that we're just random meaningless objects, that is also a complete article of faith. Because the one thing that we know, and the smartest people know this more than the rest of us, the one thing we know is that the more we know, the more we understand that we don't know. Much like the relationship within every single atom. We have a small particle spinning around another small particle, and the gap, the space between them, consists of more than 90% of the area. The more we know something, the more we grasp a little particle of something, the more we understand just how much we don't know. Anyone who thinks they've got it all sorted out, in other words, is the blindest amongst the vast mystery. Now, one of the things that I've been playing with, because if there is meaning and purpose, if the intelligence within the earth that created tigers, that created crocodiles, that created pomegranate trees and all the millions of species that have been coming and going in plant and animal and insect, domains and mineral domains. If all of those things were done with intelligence, then the same program that produced those things also produced human beings. And if we look at the Earth as a body, the way more than 98% of all cultures and cosmologies have done, they've related to the Earth as a mother, as a living part of us. It doesn't hurt to realize that we'd all be dead without the air provided by a tree. So if you were a cell in a body, and you realize that you'd be dead without a ready supply of blood, could you pretend that you were a completely different entity, that you were independent? And are there any autonomous, independent cells within our own body? Or would they die if the rest of the body died? Are there any independent human beings on the earth, or would they die if the rest of the earth died? I mean, you can say you're independent if once a nuclear holocaust destroys the entire planet. You can just live on indefinitely on your own. You can say that you're independent if once the people who invented the blackboard, who invented the chalk, who invented the cell phone, who invented video technology, who invented the English language, who created jewelry, who created cotton, who created textile fabrics, who created the shipping process that brought textile fabrics from China to here. If you say that none of those people matter, I can live my own life independently without any of them, then we can say, okay, you, unique among the human race, are an independent person who doesn't need anyone, because you can create all of that just magically on your own. But of course, you can't even create your own body on your own. You needed your parents for that. And you needed their influence to develop into the kind of person that says, I'm independent, which is fostered by a culture that emphasizes the individual. That didn't come from you either. And so in this dynamic, what is the role? What do we, how might we look at human beings as being a unique part of the body of the planet? So if this cell doesn't exist without the rest of the body, if the hand doesn't exist without the body to supply blood, if we don't exist without the earth to supply oxygen and food and other people to supply this, so what part of the body on the planet? A living reference called Gaia. Gaia. What part of Gaia's body are we? And one of the interesting things, because it's definitely troubling that our part of the body, the human being part of Gaia's body, has caused more deforestation, more species extinction, more pollution of the waters, more this, more that, etc., than all of the other species combined. So it's like all the other parts of the body, not the volcanoes, I mean, they do their part and, and different things, but within the animal and plant kingdoms, the human being has had an incredible impact. And, it leads to a common part of our environmental cosmology, which is that we are destroying the planet. So why would Gaia, so intelligent as to create all of this, create a part of her own body following the same protocols and programs that led to all of this time of evolution. Why would she do that? Leading to us. And I just finished watching the Dragon capsule, Dragon 2, with SpaceX and Elon Musk land at the International Space Station. And I've watched Elon over the last 15 years develop SpaceX out of nothing. And, you know, his passion for re-inspiring travel to Mars and the moon and this and that and the other. Now, looking through our culturated eyes, we make a big distinction between things like rockets and trees, because we kill trees to create rockets, and we burn, you know, the environment in order to fly rockets. And, you know, and so there's definitely a process with the vast majority of what we do as human beings. There's definitely a process by which we take other areas of the Earth's body and transform them into something that we participate in, that is human-made. And we make the distinction that that's not natural. But what if it's all natural? What if the Earth that gives us nourishment in every single moment, that gave rise to the probability field that is the human species, that has presided over that probability field for 1 million years or so as we've had some sense of consciousness? What if the Earth actually is doing something it understands as part of a larger relationship with the life, with the living bodies in the rest of the universe? What if not only is the Earth a living ecosystem in its variety of complex patterns, what if human beings are the means by which the core pattern of the Earth, like the core pattern of the Earth is polarity, masculine and feminine, men and women, male and female dogs, male and female snakes? What if the core program, light and dark, hot and cold, this core underlying polarity, which then creates this constant process of splitting, individuating, and then mating. Splitting, individuating, and mating. Going out into the world and partnering as one part of the body interacts with other parts of the body. It occurs to me that the human being, in its part of Gaia, is the only part that has dissociated from the existing status quo to such a level as to reach out towards the other bodies, towards the moon, towards Mars, as a beginning, going out of our orbit and bringing the patterns of Gaia, of the Earth, bringing the patterns into relationship with the other celestial bodies, with the other planets, with the sun, with a wider and wider range, much like a child relating with a mother, then relating with the father, then relating with the family, then relating with the community. And in that great initiation of human culture, moving outward into a relationship of a traveler, of someone who engages with the rest of the world. What if we are the sex organ of the earth? The part of the earth that connects two patterns together, that creates synergy, that takes all of the craftsmanship, all of the beauty, truth, goodness, ugliness, conflict, tension, all of that pattern, and bring it out into the universe, into a bigger and bigger circle. Thus being the only part of the planet able and capable of reaching out, of penetrating space in the way that we see with our rocketry that comes from the earth. It comes from the earth. It is of the earth. And we look at the laboring and the birthing process of a SpaceX, the sacrifice, the energy expenditure, the collaboration, the furious pace. And we can see something very much like a build-up in an orgasm. The ejection of patterns that are here, out there. And in doing so, the release of a synergy, the release of a possibility of relating between our planet and other planets that is as profound and as significant as the ships and the planes that fly from the east to the west, speaking again of polarity, different values. In the east, traditionally more of the circle, the family, the community. In the west, more traditionally the individual. What if this is the Earth's way? What if our role, the compensation, if you look at the messiness of sex in many mating species, all the efforts, all the risks, the fact that sometimes one of the sexual partners die in the process. There are some animals that die after ejaculation, after completing the mating. Are we one of those animals that takes so much effort and energy to bring the patterns from Earth out, to start the kernel outward? That by the end of it, and all the confusion, all the energy expenditure, that we're dead, or we're sick, or we're exhausted and vulnerable. What is our role, and how much do we have the ability to influence that narrative? How much of that is inevitable, as in the dynamics with AI? For example, it's almost impossible to stop the exponential curve towards what Kurzweil might call the singularity, the Moore's law process, the exponential curve of more and more sophisticated parts of reality. it's almost impossible to stop better and better pattern recognition, smarter and smarter organisms from emerging. And where have they come from? They've come from the human pattern, which came from the earth pattern. So you have the earth giving birth to human animals. You have human animals evolving into human beings. Then you have human beings creating computers of and for and by the earth. Meaning computers don't exist without Gaia either. All of the silica, all of the energy, all the chemicals, it's all a fusion process. You could say that human creativity is the sex of the planet. What happens when we combine iron? When we create sex with iron and nickel? Well, we get chrome. What happens when we create this and this and this and this? Terence McKenna talked about the process of evolving towards novelty, towards complexity. That the process of having sex with as many things as possible, and this, I think, is something I was thinking about the space dynamic. But if you look at the role of human beings as part of our cosmology, you have to accept that complexity, that synergy, and fusion have exponentially accelerated in the domain of human beings. That as a species, it doesn't matter which country, that human beings have combined more food, more ingredients than any other species to create food. I mean, you don't find monkeys shipping soybeans over to Japan, turning them into soy sauce, then shipping them back here, then mixing them with this. That's fusion. That's sex at a high level. You don't have that. The human being has created more fusion and more synergy. Whether that's the 50,000 chemicals we now find floating around in our bodies, or whether that's the billions of separate products, or whether that's the millions of books, or whether that's the 10,000 cultures and human languages, the human being is the organ and part of the Earth's body that has given rise to more creativity, more fusion, more exponential synergy, more sex than any other part of Gaia, any other part of this body in the entire history of that body. And that's what sex does. Sex brings two polarities together, a speaker and a listener, a giver and a receiver, an initiator and a responder. Sex is the process of creating synergy from polarity, creating a probability field that is bigger than either part can generate alone through a process of synergy. It's one of the reasons that fusion is such a big point in our horizon. Fusion, the ability to combine as partners rather than to continue the splitting process, which is the process of creating dissociation and pain, to create energy from association and integration. It's a powerful, powerful pivot point in our paradigms. But how does it feel? How do you like being the sex organ for the planet? The one who participated in creating more and more of all that possibility. and then reached an explosion point where we take off into space to start that recreation process, to start life, to give birth to some of that complexity and beauty. And artificial intelligence, as one of our many byproducts, be that in robotics and neural nets and different levels, also reaching a point where a single probe in the not too distant future can set off with a primary program of bringing as much complexity, as much partnering, as much synergy into being as possible by landing on a seemingly inanimate object and beginning and starting a relationship protocol, a partnering protocol that sees a very small pattern getting underway in ways that we currently now cannot begin to understand. It's an exciting paradigm, and it sheds new light, new meaning, new purpose on our role in our planet's relationship with itself, relationship with the rest of the universe. It sets an interesting and exciting framework to examine what we're all up to as a species.